8 years of marriage. 8 years of standing beside a man through poverty, unemployment, and every hardship life could throw at them. Sarah believed their love was unbreakable. She was wrong. One ordinary evening would shatter everything she thought she knew and expose a betrayal so deep, so calculated, that even she couldn't have imagined how far it would go. What happens next will leave you speechless. Before we continue, if stories like this move you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you don't want to miss where this one goes. And drop a comment below. Have you ever trusted someone completely only to have them destroy you? Now let's get into it. Sarah had been the perfect wife for 8 years. She stood beside her husband, Michael, through poverty, through unemployment, through family pressure that would have broken weaker couples. She believed without question that their marriage would last forever. But everything changes in a single, ordinary evening. That evening, Sarah comes home earlier than expected. She is carrying wonderful news she cannot wait to share with her husband. Her heart is light. Her steps are quick. Instead of joy waiting for her, she walks into her own sitting room and finds Michael holding Rachel, her closest friend. The woman she trusted with her secrets, the woman who sat beside her at her own wedding. The truth crashes down instantly. Michael doesn't deny it. He doesn't even try. He admits plainly that he is in love with Rachel. Worse than the affair itself. It has been going on for more than a year. A full year of dinners Sarah cooked while he was somewhere else. A full year of nights she slept peacefully beside a man who was already gone. Sarah is shattered. Then comes the sentence that finishes what is left of her heart. Rachel understands me better than you ever did. 8 years reduced to a single careless line. Within weeks, Michael files for divorce. He moves out. He moves in with Rachel as if the last 8 years were nothing more than a waiting room before his real life could begin. Sarah tells herself it cannot get worse. She is wrong again. Not long afterward, a beautifully designed wedding invitation arrives at her door. Cream paper, gold lettering. Her name is not on the guest list, but the message underneath is unmistakable. Her ex-husband and her former best friend are getting married. Everyone around her expects the same thing. They expect Sarah to disappear quietly, to grieve in private, to let Michael and Rachel walk into their new life without so much as a backward glance. They have no idea. The wedding they are so carefully planning will become the one day nobody in that hall will ever forget. Word spreads quickly through their small community. Family members take sides before Sarah has even had the chance to speak. Some pull her aside and whisper that they are sorry. Others avoid her eyes entirely, as though her pain might be contagious. Michael's own mother, a woman who once called Sarah my daughter, begins appearing in photos beside Rachel, smiling, laughing, welcoming her into the family as though the woman standing beside her son had not walked into someone else's marriage and simply taken what she wanted. Sarah watches it all from a distance. She says nothing. People mistake her silence for weakness. They do not understand that silence, sometimes, is where the strongest women go to plan. Meanwhile, Michael and Rachel appear to be living a dream. Expensive weekend getaways, pre-wedding photo shoots on private beaches, engagement pictures filling every timeline, every group chat, every whispered conversation in the market. To anyone watching from the outside, it looks like a love story. But behind the filtered photos and the rehearsed smiles, something else is quietly moving. Something neither Michael nor Rachel can see yet. A secret from their own past, one they believed was buried the moment Sarah signed the divorce papers, is beginning to stir. And it is not staying buried much longer. Because somewhere, someone already knows the truth. And that person has already decided the wedding day will not end the way Michael and Rachel have planned it. What would you have done in Sarah's position, walked away in silence, or fought back the moment you found them together? Tell me in the comments. And if you want to see how far this betrayal really goes, make sure you're subscribed because Chapter 2 is coming next. The divorce leaves Sarah broken in ways she never expects. She stops sleeping through the night. She stops answering calls from numbers she doesn't recognize, afraid of what new humiliation might be waiting on the other end. For weeks, she barely leaves her apartment, and when she does, she feels every eye in the room land on her like a verdict already decided. People begin taking sides almost immediately. Some sympathize with her openly. They bring food she doesn't eat. They send messages she doesn't answer. They tell her she deserves better, and she nods, because it's easier than explaining that deserving better doesn't fill the silence in an empty house. Others are not so kind. Whispers travel faster than truth ever does. Some say she must have driven Michael away. Some say a good wife would have noticed the signs sooner. Some say nothing at all to her face, but she hears it anyway, in the way conversations stop the moment she enters a room. Even Michael's family moves on without her. Rachel is welcomed into gatherings Sarah once hosted. She sits in chairs Sarah once sat in. She is introduced to relatives as though she has always belonged there, as though 8 years of Sarah's life were a rough draft the family has quietly agreed to forget. Sarah could fight this. She could call the family members who once loved her and demand they choose a side. She could show up uninvited to gatherings and force an uncomfortable silence onto every room she enters. She doesn't. Rather than chase revenge, Sarah chooses something harder. She chooses peace. It doesn't happen all at once. Peace never does. It comes slowly, in small decisions repeated every day. The decision to get out of bed. The decision to answer one phone call. The decision to stop checking Rachel's photos at 2 in the morning, searching for proof of a happiness she secretly hopes isn't real. Weeks turn into months. Sarah returns to work, throwing herself into projects she had abandoned during the worst of the marriage. Her manager notices the change first, the sharper focus, the longer hours, the quiet determination that seems to arrive out of nowhere but has actually been building for years. She starts something else too, something she never planned. Women from her building, her church, her old friend groups begin reaching out. Quietly at first, a message here, a phone call there. Women in difficult marriages. Women who see themselves in what happened to her. Women who don't know who else to talk to. Sarah listens. She always listens. She doesn't have answers for all of them, but she has something rarer, the willingness to sit with someone else's pain without flinching, because she has already sat with her own. Slowly, without meaning to, she becomes the person other women call when their own world starts to crack. In helping them rebuild, she starts rebuilding herself. The confident woman she used to be, the one who existed before Michael, before the affair, before the humiliation of that invitation arriving in gold lettering, begins to resurface. Not all at once, not without setbacks, but she is coming back. Meanwhile, across town, Michael and Rachel appear to be living the dream Sarah once imagined for herself. There are expensive outings almost every week. There are pre-wedding celebrations attended by people who once called Sarah family. There are engagement photos everywhere, soft lighting, matching outfits, captions about destiny and timing and love finding its way. To everyone watching, it looks flawless. But flawless things rarely survive contact with the truth. Because behind the smiling photographs, behind the perfectly staged proposals and the carefully chosen venues, a secret is quietly waiting. A secret neither Michael nor Rachel has spoken about since the day the divorce was finalized. A secret they both assumed had been buried along with the marriage itself. It hasn't been. Somewhere, records exist. Somewhere, a decision made in the shadows of the affair is about to resurface. A decision that will prove this wasn't just a love story that happened to hurt someone. It was something far more deliberate. And the person who knows the full truth is closer to the wedding than either of them realizes. As the wedding draws closer, something begins to shift. At first, it's small. A missed call from a number Michael doesn't recognize. A text message with no words, only a single blinking question mark. He assumes it's a wrong number. He deletes it and moves on with the seating chart, the caterer, the endless small decisions that come with building a wedding meant to announce to the world that he made the right choice. Then the calls become more frequent. Always from a different number. Always at strange hours, late at night, early in the morning, moments before an important meeting. Michael starts to feel a low hum of unease he can't quite name, the kind of feeling that sits just beneath the surface of an otherwise perfect week. He tells himself it's nothing. But nothing doesn't usually leave him standing outside on the balcony at 2 a.m., staring at his phone, wondering who could possibly know. Because there is something to know. Long before the divorce was finalized, while Sarah still believed she was fighting to save her marriage, Michael had already begun making arrangements for a future without her. Quietly, over several months, he transferred family property and joint savings into accounts Sarah never had access to. Documents were signed. Assets were moved. By the time Sarah discovered the affair, there was already very little left in her name to fight for. It wasn't carelessness, it was a plan. And Rachel wasn't just aware of it, she was part of it. It was Rachel, in fact, who first suggested moving the savings before the divorce filing became public, a quiet conversation over dinner, framed as protecting their future, rather than what it actually was. She had encouraged it. She had helped smooth over the details. She had told Michael more than once that Sarah would never need to know. For a long time, it seemed like she was right. But secrets built on other people's silence tend to have short lifespans. Somewhere along the way, someone saw something. A conversation overheard. A document glimpsed on a shared computer. A bank employee who noticed a pattern that didn't sit right. Someone knows, and someone has decided the truth deserves an audience. The messages grow bolder. One evening, as Michael is finalizing the last details of the ceremony with the wedding planner, his phone lights up with a new message. No introduction, no explanation, just 8 words that seem to reach directly into his chest and squeeze. The truth will attend your wedding. He reads it 3 times before the meaning fully lands. For the first time since the affair began, Michael feels something he hasn't allowed himself to feel in over a year: fear. Not the mild anxiety of wedding day jitters, but a deep, cold dread that the future he has spent so long constructing might collapse in a single afternoon, in front of everyone who matters to him. He doesn't tell Rachel about the messages, not at first. He tells himself he can handle it quietly. He tells himself that whoever is sending these messages is bluffing, testing him, trying to extract money or attention or some small piece of leverage. He tells himself a great many things because the alternative, that someone has real proof and real intent to use it, is too large to hold. But the calls don't stop. And slowly, the questions start to feel less like a threat and more like a countdown. Michael begins reviewing old records late at night, trying to determine exactly what could be exposed and how. He finds himself double-checking locks on doors that were never unlocked. He finds himself flinching at unfamiliar numbers, at unexpected knocks, at silences that used to mean nothing and now mean everything. Rachel notices the change in him before he says a word. She asks him what's wrong. He tells her it's nothing, wedding stress, nothing more. She doesn't fully believe him, but she doesn't push, either perhaps because some part of her already suspects what kind of stress can make a man's hands shake at the dinner table. Meanwhile, the wedding planning continues because it has to. Invitations are confirmed. The venue is booked. The dress is fitted. From the outside, nothing has changed. The countdown to the perfect day continues exactly as scheduled. But inside, something has already broken. Michael begins to understand, in the quiet hours when sleep won't come, that the life he built by taking what wasn't his was never as secure as he believed. Somewhere out there, someone is holding the one piece of information that could turn his wedding day into his reckoning. And whoever it is has no intention of staying silent. The wedding day finally arrives. The hall is transformed into something out of a magazine, white flowers cascading down every pillar, soft gold lighting, a string quartet playing near the entrance. Every seat is filled. Family members, friends, respected elders and colleagues from every corner of Michael and Rachel's lives have gathered to witness what everyone believes will be the happiest day of two people's lives. Rachel stands at the back of the hall in her gown, breathless with excitement, unaware that the messages Michael has been receiving for weeks have followed them here, into this very room. Michael, on the other hand, cannot stop scanning the crowd. He tells himself it's nerves. He tells himself the messages were an empty threat, a cruel prank from someone with too much time and too little courage to show their face. He almost believes it, right up until the doors at the back of the hall open one more time. Sarah walks in. The entire hall falls silent. Conversations stop mid-sentence. Heads turn. A ripple of whispers moves through the rows of guests faster than anyone can control it. Some guests assume she has come to make a scene, to beg Michael to reconsider, to humiliate herself in front of everyone who once knew her as his wife. Others brace for a confrontation they're certain is coming. Instead, Sarah does something no one expects. She walks calmly to an empty seat near the back, smooths her dress and sits down. She doesn't speak. She doesn't approach the altar. She doesn't so much as look in Michael's direction. She simply sits, hands folded in her lap, as composed as if she were attending any ordinary ceremony. The whispers grow louder. Some assume she has finally accepted the outcome, come simply to prove she has moved on. Others aren't so sure. There is something in the stillness of her posture that unsettles more than any outburst would have. The ceremony begins. The officiant welcomes the guests. The vows are prepared. Rachel's smile is radiant as she takes her place at the front of the hall, and for a moment, it genuinely does look like nothing in the world could interrupt this day. Then everything changes. A man Michael doesn't immediately recognize steps forward from the side of the hall, holding a folder in his hands. He introduces himself briefly, a name unfamiliar to most of the guests, but one that makes Rachel's face lose its color the instant she hears it. He asks the officiant for a brief moment before the ceremony continues. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. Some assume it's a mistake, a miscommunication, someone in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the man doesn't retreat. Instead, he opens the folder and begins to speak. He speaks of transferred property, of hidden accounts, of documents signed in the months before the divorce was finalized, moving assets that were never Michael's to move alone. He speaks of conversations Rachel had, quietly encouraging every step, assuring Michael that Sarah would never find out. Copies of the documents are passed to several guests near the front, family members, elders, people whose opinions carry weight in this community. The hall, moments ago filled with joy, is now filled with something else entirely. Rachel turns to Michael, her expression shifting from confusion to horror. Michael's mouth opens, but no explanation comes out fast enough to matter. Every second of silence only confirms what the documents already suggest. Family members who once welcomed Rachel with open arms now stare at her as though seeing her for the first time. Elders who came to bless this union sit frozen, unsure whether to stand, to leave, or to demand answers no one in the room seems ready to give. The bride and groom stand at the altar, completely still, as the weight of the moment presses down on them from every direction. No one expected the happiest day of their lives to become the day their carefully built world came apart in front of everyone who mattered to them. And through it all, Sarah remains exactly where she sat when she walked in, quiet, composed, watching the truth do something she never had to lift a hand to accomplish herself. Did you expect the reveal to come from someone other than Sarah? Tell me who you think the mystery man is in the comments below. And if you want to see how this wedding and this marriage completely falls apart, make sure you're subscribed because it's coming next. For a long moment, nobody in the hall moves. Then all at once, chaos erupts. Voices rise from every corner of the room. Family members who moments ago sat calmly in their seats are now on their feet, demanding answers, waving copies of the documents in the air as proof of what they refuse to believe is true. An elder near the front stands and calls for order, but his voice is swallowed by the noise around him. Guests begin whispering to each other in urgent, hushed tones, then abandon the whispering altogether. Some pull out their phones. Others simply stand and start walking toward the exit, unwilling to witness whatever comes next. At the altar, Rachel turns on Michael first. "You told me this was handled," she hisses, her voice shaking with a fury that has clearly been building since the moment the folder opened. "You told me no one would ever find out." Michael's jaw tightens. "I told you, this was your idea. You're the one who said we should move the accounts before anyone noticed. Don't you dare put this on me." Their voices climb over each other, no longer performing for the guests, no longer pretending this is anything other than what it has become. Two people who built a relationship on secrecy, now unable to agree on who deserves the blame for its collapse. The love they displayed so proudly in every engagement photo, every pre-wedding celebration, every carefully staged smile, it evaporates in real time, right in front of the very people they invited to witness their happiness. Michael's mother sits frozen in the front row, one hand pressed to her mouth. The woman who welcomed Rachel into every family gathering, who introduced her as though she had always belonged, now cannot bring herself to look at either of them. Then comes the moment nobody in the hall saw coming. The man who revealed the documents raises his voice one final time, cutting through the noise. "There's something else you should know," he says. "I'm not the one who put this together." The hall quiets just enough for him to be heard. "I was hired," he continues, "by someone who had access to records neither of you thought anyone would ever see." Every eye in the room turns toward Sarah. She doesn't move. She doesn't confirm it. She simply watches, calm and unreadable, as the man shakes his head. "Not her," he says. A fresh wave of confusion moves through the crowd. If not Sarah, then who? Heads turn from one guest to another, searching for a face that might reveal guilt, searching for anyone who seems to be reacting differently than shock. Then Rachel's own sister rises slowly from her seat, near the middle of the hall. Gasps ripple outward. Rachel's expression shatters completely as she stares at her sister, disbelief and betrayal crashing into her all at once. "You knew what she did to Sarah," her sister says quietly, though the silence in the room carries her words to every corner. "You knew. And you helped him hide it anyway. I couldn't watch you build a life on someone else's ruin and say nothing." Rachel has no response. For the first time since the affair began, she is the one without words. Within minutes, the wedding completely falls apart. Guests who came dressed in their finest, carrying gifts and good wishes, now leave the hall discussing betrayal instead of celebration. The caterers quietly begin clearing untouched plates. The string quartet packs away their instruments without anyone telling them to stop playing. The silence itself is instruction enough. Michael's mother approaches Sarah briefly on her way out, her eyes wet, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry," she says. "I should have known better." Sarah only nods. She doesn't need an apology to feel whole again. She stopped needing that months ago. As the hall empties around her, Sarah rises from her seat, smooths her dress the same way she did when she walked in, and quietly makes her way to the door. She doesn't look back at Michael. She doesn't look at Rachel, who now stands alone at the altar, abandoned by the very family that once celebrated her. Sarah never needed revenge. She only needed to wait. The truth had already fought the battle she once thought she'd have to fight alone. Months pass after the wedding that never was. The story doesn't stay contained within the walls of that hall for long. In a community where everyone knows everyone, word travels fast, and word of what happened travels faster than most. By the time the first month is over, there is hardly a person in their circle who hasn't heard some version of what took place. The documents, the confrontation, the sister who stepped forward when no one expected her to. For Michael and Rachel, the consequences arrive slowly at first, then all at once. The relationship they destroyed a marriage to build does not survive contact with the truth. Without the secrecy that once bound them together, there is very little left holding them in place. The late-night arguments that started at the altar don't stop once the guests go home. They only grow louder, more frequent, more bitter. Trust, once broken this completely, does not simply repair itself. Rachel finds herself isolated in ways she never anticipated. The family that once welcomed her so warmly now keeps her at arm's length. Gatherings she used to attend without a second thought suddenly become uncomfortable, filled with polite distance rather than the closeness she had grown used to. Her own sister, the one who exposed the truth, doesn't reach out to apologize, and Rachel realizes slowly that she doesn't entirely blame her for that. Michael fares no better. The property transfers and hidden accounts, once exposed, become a legal and financial mess that takes months to untangle. Colleagues who once respected him now regard him with quiet suspicion. The reputation he spent years building erodes faster than he ever thought possible, undone not by one mistake, but by the accumulation of every quiet decision he made in the shadows. Where there was once passion between them, regret takes its place. Where there was once a shared secret that bonded them, there is now only the exhausting work of assigning blame. Meanwhile, across town, Sarah's life begins to flourish in ways she couldn't have imagined the night she found Michael with Rachel in her own sitting room. The women she began quietly counseling in the months after her divorce have grown into something larger than she ever intended. An informal support network that meets weekly, filled with women navigating their own versions of betrayal, uncertainty, and rebuilding. Sarah didn't set out to become anyone's guide through heartbreak. She simply refused to let her own pain go to waste. Her work no longer feels like something she does to distract herself from grief. It feels like purpose. She moves into a new apartment, smaller than the home she once shared with Michael, but entirely her own. She redecorates it slowly, room by room, choosing every detail without needing anyone else's approval. For the first time in years, every decision in her life belongs only to her. She finds peace. She finds success in her work. She finds a version of happiness that doesn't depend on the people who once tried to take everything from her. Then, one afternoon almost a year after the wedding that fell apart, she runs into Michael by chance outside a small cafe. He looks different. Thinner, more tired, the confidence that once carried him through every room now noticeably absent. For a long moment, neither of them says anything. Finally, he speaks. "I'm sorry," he says, and his voice breaks slightly on the words. "For all of it. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to hear it." There are tears in his eyes as he says it, not performed. Not for an audience this time, because there is no audience left to perform for. Sarah studies him for a moment. She feels no anger rising in her chest, no urge to make him suffer further, no satisfaction in watching him struggle. She simply feels calm, the way still water feels after a storm has finally passed. "Some wounds heal," she says quietly, "but they never become the same again." She doesn't wait for a response. She doesn't need one. As she walks away, Michael stands alone on the sidewalk, finally understanding something it took him losing everything to see. He didn't just lose a wife that evening, he chose Rachel over honesty. He lost the one person who had loved him without condition, without hidden motives, without needing anything from him in return. And no version of the life he tried to build afterward ever came close to replacing that. Sarah never looks back. She goes on to build a life defined not by what was taken from her, but by everything she chose to build in its place, quietly, patiently, on her own terms. Because in the end, a person may steal your spouse. They may steal your sense of safety, your trust, even your belief in love itself. But they can never steal the peace that comes when the truth finally wins. What was the biggest lesson you took from Sarah's story, walking away in silence, or letting the truth do the fighting for her? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story kept you hooked from start to finish, make sure you're subscribed for the next one, because there's always another truth waiting to come out.